You do not make mistakes in a vacuum. You understand that, right? That when you make a mistake, it has a ripple effect on the others in your life. So before you go jumping to conclusions, get the facts first. Because if you make decisions based on assumptions, it can be dangerous and even deadly. 1 Corinthians 13, and this is a very famous chapter that it's called the love chapter, and it deals with what real love looks like. So you'll hear this read a lot at weddings and different things, Valentine's Day and different times. So it talks about what real love looks like. Verse 4 says, love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy, it does not parade itself, is not puffed up, it does not behave itself rudely, does not seek its own, does not provoke, thinks no evil. So if you want to know what love looks like, this is a great chapter. 7 is where I want to focus on this morning. It bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, it endures all things. So that second kind of section is real important. It bears all things, it believes all things. So if I love you, then I will always give you the benefit of the doubt. That's what that means. That I will always kind of lean towards the side that whatever you say, you're telling me the truth. All right? Leon Morris, in his Tyndale New Testament commentary, said this: to believe all things is to see the best in others. This does not mean that love is gullible, but that it does not think the worst as in the way of the world. It retains its faith. Love is not deceived, but it's always ready to give the benefit of the doubt. So that's one verse I wanted to share with you. Another verse is in Titus chapter 1, verse 15. Titus 1:15, it says this: to the pure all things are pure, but to those who are defiled and unbelieving nothing is pure. So what he's talking about is if I have a pure heart, it affects how I look at people. If I have a wicked heart, it affects how I look at people. So to the pure, all things are pure. It says to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. In our culture and in our lives personally, we make some mistakes. And that is that we, instead of judging actions, we judge motives. Like we think that we can somehow look inside someone's heart and see what's really in their heart. But we don't know what's in people's hearts. So the only thing that I can legitimately judge is what I know to be true and what I have seen you do, okay? But I can't, so I can make a judgment call on an individual based on what they've done, but I can't make a judgment call on an individual based on what I think they are, all right? And this is basically what the Bible's saying, is it's talking about when it comes to judging people and dealing with other people in relationships, I always want to assume the best. As a Christ follower, I want to assume the best, and I want to deal with the worst. Let me give you another verse. Ephesians 4:2-3. Always be humble. This is a New Living Translation, not the New King James. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. Now, the title of the message today is The Problem with Assuming the Worst. And I want to take you to 2 Samuel 10 now. And this is real important to me because I struggle in this area, okay? So this is a very personal sermon to me, and hopefully it will help you out. In our house, I am Mr. Negative. I am the one that, and if you know my wife, anybody in this room would be Mr. Negative or Mrs. Negative. So, but I do tend to kind of see the worst or think the worst. And it's something that I've struggled with my life. I think that God has given me gifts. One of those gifts is the gift of discernment. I feel like I can really get a feel for people pretty fast. Like I meet somebody and I talk to them and it's like, okay, this is a fraud. Okay. The problem with that gift is you can go crazy with it. And you can read into stuff that's not there. And I will tell you this, it was brutal for me when I was a young pastor. Because when you're a young pastor and you have a small congregation, and you plant a church, like we planted a church and we had 33 people our first Sunday and we had 20 the second one. And then, so you have this real small congregation and you live and die with everybody. Meaning that, boy, everybody's seen as really important, and everybody's important now. I don't want to underplay that. But the point is, when you have a congregation of 30 and 10 are gone, that's a third of your congregation. That's a huge... So you have this small congregation and people be gone a Sunday, and I would immediately go to, oh, they're leaving the church. I mean, they're gone one Sunday. Now it's kind of funny in our church, if somebody comes 2 weeks out of 4, we call them a faithful attender, You laugh, it's the truth. So but in the early days, it was kind of like, man, we want everybody to be there at every service all the time, and it was just when somebody was missing, I would immediately go to the worst. It wasn't that the kids were sick, it wasn't that they were out seeing family, it was just, oh, they're leaving the church. Just immediately go to the negative, and Karen have to walk me back off the ledge, and so they're going to be crowns so large in heaven for my wife that she will not be able to put them on her head. It would break her neck. So, yes, thank you. Now you all hurt my feelings by clapping about that right there. Anyway, so my point is that I made a lot of mistakes early on because I always would assume the worst. When somebody's gone, they're leaving the church. When somebody wanted to meet with me as they wanted to criticize me. Just negative, okay? 2 Samuel 10 is kind of, you'd read it and you're like, this is kind of a weird place in the text. But I think that what's happening in 2 Samuel 10 is you have a picture of a guy who assumes the worst, and it cost him dearly. So I get the whole thing about using discernment. I get the whole thing. I understand all that. But I think, let's be honest, we do not err on the side of giving people the benefit of the doubt. We err on the side of, oh man, they're out to get me. So I'm trying to swing the pendulum back the other way with this sermon. And so let's read the story in 2 Samuel chapter 10. And then we'll kind of walk through the text. Because I know we're a little later than normal, but we're going to get through it, okay? It happened after this that the king of the people of Ammon died, and Haman, his son, reigned in his place. So this king died, and his son, he was the leader of the people of Ammon. His son, Haman, reigned in his place. David said in verse number 2, I will show kindness to Hanan, the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness to me. Now, I don't know what happened here, because the Bible doesn't record it. The Bible doesn't record what kindness Nahash showed to David. I think it was probably pretty minimal, but because they were enemies. The people of Ammon and the people of Israel were enemies, but there's something that Nahash did to David that was kind, and so he wants to show kindness to these people, in particular Nahash. And so David does this. And David's servants came into the land of the people of Ammon. Now, it doesn't tell us what they had. It doesn't tell us if they had gifts. It doesn't tell us they just sent a group of people to offer their condolences to the king. It doesn't really tell us. All we know is that David sends a group of people to attend the funeral. It's just like, what president died recently? And all the presidents came to the funeral. I forget. Yes, George Bush died recently, and so do what? His wife. Okay. Isn't he about dead? I don't mean that bad, but isn't he close to death? Or he's old. He's old. He's like. I mean, you get close to 100, you're close. You're right. This illustration is spiraling out of control. So what he does is so people came and they're just kind of representatives, right? We're from the house of whatever, and we're here offering our condolences. And this is a similar thing. So David sends this group of people, and he's just offering his condolences. Okay, he may be bringing them money, he may be bringing them gifts. Okay, verse 3. And the princes of the people of Ammon said to Hanun their lord, "Do you think that David really honors your father because he has sent comforters to you?" Okay, so what are they assuming? They are assuming the worst. So they say, "Do you really think that he wants to comfort you? Has David not rather sent his servants to you to search the city, to spy it out, and to overthrow it?" Okay, so we see the first example of they're assuming the worst, because he does this multiple times here. So let me kind of walk through it because we're short on time. The first mistake that I make when I assume the worst is it robs us of a blessing. Number one, it robs us of a blessing. So David sends these guys, and what's their purpose for coming? To encourage, to comfort, to help. All right? But they assumed the worst. And so we're going to see in a minute how poorly they treat him. We don't know what kindness Nahash had showed to David, but we know that David wants to return the kindness to him. But these guys don't even make it into the city because they are shut out because they judge their motives. Now let me get a little personal here. How many of us have shut people out of our lives because somebody that we had in the past as a friend burned us? Somebody burned us, somebody stabbed us in the back, somebody betrayed us. So since they have done that, we then have a closed heart and we let nobody else in. And what we do when we do that, because we assume, well, this person, they obviously want to do the same thing that my other friend did to me. When that's not the case at all. They have pure motives. They have genuine motives. They want to be a blessing to you. But we stiff-arm everybody and we keep them out of our lives because we don't want to be hurt again, and we don't want them to stab us in the back. And what we are doing in essence is we are robbing ourselves of a blessing that God may want to put in our lives. And this is what's going on here. We know the bigger picture because we know the whole story. These guys weren't coming to spy out the land. They were coming to help, to encourage, to be a positive influence in the situation. But because they assumed their motives and assumed the worst, it cost them. It robbed them of a blessing. 2, when you assume the worst, it leads to bad advice. So you got these guys who are telling him, "Hey man, that's not why they're here." Once again, it is a dangerous thing to judge people's motives. I don't know your heart, okay? Look, let me tell you a mistake I used to make early on. Like, I would preach, and what I've learned over the years is that people listen differently. Some people sit on the edge of their seats, and they listen attentively and excitedly. Some people, it's like I want to get them a pillow. I mean, they just kind of chill, and sometimes their eyes are closed, and they're just kind of, that's how they're listening. Some people seem indifferent. And man, I used to get set up here, and I'd look out in the eyes of the people, and I'd start to get ticked. And it would affect my preaching because I'd get angry because of how people were listening. Because I'd get mad at them because they're not listening the way I would listen. Like, I think when somebody's talking, you ought to be looking at them, and you ought to be at least remotely showing that you're interested, looking them in the eye. And these are, but it's just my opinion. Okay? So what happened is I'd get really upset, and I'd get really angry. And then one of these days, I'm kind of venting about, so-and-so was in there, and blah, 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 blah. And Karen said, I don't think anybody had to come to church today. I said, what are you talking about? She says, everybody that walked in that door came in there voluntarily. Now, some of the kids may come in kicking and screaming, right? But the adults, they came into the church voluntarily. They got in their car, they got up this morning, they drove to this location, they had other things they could have done, they walked in, they sat down, they made a conscientious, nobody put a gun to their head, nobody made them come in here, nobody twisted their arm. Everybody is your friend, Mark. No matter how they look when you're communicating. Thank you. So now I see you as my friend that's here to encourage me rather than here as my enemy to pick me apart. Now, there may be some enemies in the room. I understand that. But the reality is 95% of you came in here voluntarily and you're excited to hear the word and you want to see what the text says and you're anxious to hear what God would do. So that helps me in my communication. Now, you may listen differently than I would, so I can't assume, oh man, I'll tell you what, they got a bad heart. So we do stupid stuff, don't we? We make our friends our enemies because we think that we can read into their heart. Like, have you ever seen somebody in the store and you waved at them and they didn't wave back? And then you just were like, oh, that jerk. Oh, I can't believe. Now, do you understand that maybe they just didn't see you? I mean, shouldn't that be maybe the first thing that comes to our mind? Rather than immediately going to, oh, they hate our guts and they want to kill our children. But this is what we do. And why do we give people that we do not know, why do we look at them better than we look at people that we know? We give people that we don't know the benefit of the doubt, but we don't give people that we know the benefit of the doubt. And this is what's going on here. They're just assuming the worst, and it leads to bad advice. So they're telling him, hey man, don't let these guys in here because they're nothing but spies. They don't know that. They're just assuming it. So then he does something really, really dumb. Number 3, the third thing that happens when we assume the worst is it results in poor decisions. Look at what happens in verse number 4. Therefore, Hanan took David's servants and he shaved off half their beards. Now you have to understand that in this time in history, in our time, we value youth. Everybody's trying to look younger. You know, we're buying the cream, we're doing the stuff because we want to look younger. We're like terrified of getting old. Hey, hate to break it to y'all, it's coming, right? We're all going to get old. But in this culture, they valued the elderly. The older were the ones of respect and renown. So younger people would try to look older. And one of the ways you look older is you grow a beard. All right, I've never had a beard in my life, and we'll never have one. It would look ridiculous. So all of these young guys in particular had beards, and it made them automatically look older, and they were seen as wise. And so you have all of these Jewish men that have these beards. They come into the country, so they humiliate them by cutting off half of their beard. It's just a thing of humiliation. And then they do something even more humiliating, is they cut off their garments in the middle at their buttocks and sent them away. Okay. So legit, they cut them off at their waist. Jewish men were very concerned about their entire body being covered. So that's why, for example, if you remember the sermon on the Good Samaritan, where you have the father, he sees his son. Like, old Jewish men did not run and did not show any kind of skin. So for a Jewish man to reach up to grab his garment so that he could run faster to get to his son was scandalous, because they didn't do that. He didn't show any skin. He didn't show any leg. That's a way to say it. But they not only show the leg, they humiliate them by showing their behind. They're publicly humiliating these people, is what they're doing. This is a bad decision. And let me just warn you about this. If you start the defense of what you've done with, I thought, that's bad. Well, I thought that, okay, that shows that you don't know. You think. And things can be incredibly misleading. You can be incredibly misled. So they think that they're spies, so they publicly humiliate them by cutting off half their beards and cutting off their garments at their waist. All right? So then, verse 5. When they told David, he sent to meet them because the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, wait at Jericho until your beards have grown and then return. So David hears about it. He meets them in Jericho. He says, you guys wait here until your beards grow back, and then you come home, and we'll get you some. Obviously, they upgraded their wardrobe, got them some new clothes. All right. Then verse 6. When the people of Ammon saw that they had made themselves repulsive to David, the people of Ammon sent and hired the Assyrians. All right. So here we have assumption number 1, which is the assumption that that these guys are spies. Now they make assumption number 2. And the assumption number 2 is that David is ticked, so he's going to come and send his army to defeat us. It just says that he's upset. It doesn't say he's bringing his army with him. There's nowhere in there where it says, okay, I'm bringing. So they make the second assumption, which is David's mad, so this is what he's going to do. He's going to then attack us. So they hire some people to help him. So they hired the Syrians of Beth Rehob and the Syrians of Zobah, 20,000 foot soldiers from the king of Maacah, 1,000 men, and from Ishtab, 12,000 men. So, number 4, the problem with assuming the worst is it just kind of snowballs. 1, we miss out on blessings. Then it leads to us giving ourselves bad advice or getting bad advice from others. Then that leads to a bad decision. Then that leads to overreacting. It causes us to overreact, and that's what. So he thinks David's mad. He's going to come conquer me. So I better get I better hire some soldiers and get them here so that I can fight this battle. Even though nobody said a battle is going to happen, he's trying, in a sense, here to be. He thinks he's being proactive, but what he's doing is an act of war. So now he puts David in this position where, okay, now David's got to do something because he's amassing this army and they're coming towards Jerusalem trying to head off David at the pass, basically. So it says, verse 7, when David heard of it, he sent Joab and all of the army of the mighty men. Then the people of Ammon came out and put themselves in battle array at the entrance of the gate. And the Syrians of Zobath, Beth Rehob, Ishtab, and Maacah were by themselves in the field. When Joab saw that the battle line was against them, before and behind them, so they're surrounded, he chose some of Israel's best and put them in battle array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he put under the command of Abishai, his brother, and that he might set them in battle array against the people of Ammon. Then he said, if the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But if the people of Ammon are too strong for you, then I will come and help you. Be of good courage, and let us be strong for our people and for the cities of our God, and may the Lord do what is good in his sight. So he's like, fight hard, and if you're in trouble, I'll come help you. If I'm in trouble, you come help me. Okay, they're working together. So Joab and the people who were with him drew near for the battle against the Syrians, and they fled before him. This is a really weird story. So they surround him. They go up to start the battle, and the Syrians are like, I'm going. Like nobody even fights. They just escape. They just run away. All right? So, verse 14. When the people of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fleeing, so these people they hired are like, don't want the job anymore. We'll give you your money back. We'll refund you the check. We're not fighting for you, okay? So when they saw that the Syrians were fleeing, they also fled before Abishai and entered the city. So Joab returned from the people of Ammon and went to Jerusalem. When the Syrians saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they gathered together. Then Hadadezer sent and brought out the Syrians who were beyond the river, and they came to Helam, and Shobach, the commander of Hadadezer's army, went before them. When it was told David, he gathered all Israel, crossed over the Jordan, and came to Helam. And the Syrians set themselves in battle array against David and fought with him. Then the Syrians fled before Israel, and David killed 700 charioteers and 40,000 horsemen of the Assyrians, and struck Shobach, the commander of their army, who died there. Number 5, what is the problem with assuming the worst? It can be dangerous and even deadly. It can be dangerous and even deadly. How many thousands died? 40,000 people died, 40,000 horsemen of the Syrians, and 700 charioteers, and they lost their commander of their army. Why did this all happen? Because one Yahoo assumed the worst. He assumed the worst. He got bad advice. He made a poor decision to humiliate these people. He then assumed the worst again by thinking David's going to come wipe us out. So he recruits a bunch of people to fight against Israel. They take the proactive position. David then has to defend himself. And God swoops in and fights for David. And 40,000 Syrians die. And it's because one guy assumed the worst. You do not make mistakes in a vacuum. You understand that, right? That when you make a mistake, it has a ripple effect on the others in your life. So before you go jump into conclusions, get the facts first. Because if you make decisions based on assumptions, it can be dangerous and even deadly. And then I want you to notice the last thing in verse number 19. And when all the kings who were servants to Hadadezer saw that they were defeated by Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. Now listen to this last line. So the Assyrians were afraid to help the people of Ammon anymore. You think? Number 6, what's the problem with making assumptions? It damages our relationships. It damages our relationships. Have you ever accused somebody of something that was far from the truth? Buddy, when you do that, when you accuse somebody of something that's far from the truth, it destroys relationships. And trust is something that is incredibly difficult to rebuild. Let me tell you a better way to live. Love everybody. And when you love everybody, you're going to get hurt. So what do you do when you get hurt? You forgive. Isn't that what Jesus said? Isn't that what he taught us to do? How many times should we forgive somebody that offends me? 7 times? Jesus said no, 70 times 7. And that's the same person who does the same offense. So I love everybody. I love everybody. I understand that loving everybody makes me vulnerable. So people are going to use me and abuse me and take advantage of me. And when they do, I should forgive them, trust God that He'll work the things out, and keep on loving. This is not what we do. We love everybody until we get hurt, and then once we get hurt, we build walls and we let nobody in. We keep everybody at arm's length because you may hurt me like that person hurt me, and I'm telling you, I believe that that's a mistake. And that's why I think sometimes as people get older, they get bitter. And they get bitter because the longer you live, the more you're going to be hurt. Now, what you do with that hurt is up to you. Do you forgive or do you internalize it? And do you throw everybody into the same bucket that the person that hurt you is in? I think that's a mistake. Look, don't judge me based on your former pastor. So the guy may have he may have stole money from the church, and he may have done something inappropriate, but don't put every pastor in that camp. We're not all the same. Okay? You may have had a friend, let me just tell you this. You may have had a friend that stabbed you in the back. Get another friend. Because I'm going to tell you something. Life is lone. It is miserable when you do it alone. But we build these walls. And we let nobody in. And we live miserable, lonely, bitter, angry lives. Because why? We're assuming that everybody's just like that person that hurt me. And they're not all the same. So your wife cheated on you, left you, stabbed you in the back. Pray that God gives you another wife. And love her with all your heart. There's enough hate in the world. Shouldn't the people of God be people of love? And look, I'm going to tell you right now, when you love deeply, you will get hurt deeply. But they did it with Jesus, didn't they? Nobody's ever given like Jesus gave. Did people take advantage of it? Oh, my word. When he was dying on the cross, his darkest moment, boy, they were lined up there to support him, weren't they? Now his mother, Mary Magdalene, and another woman were at the foot of the cross. And one of the disciples, John, was there. Remember that? Boy, Jesus came out of the tomb and said, boy, there is hell to pay. Didn't he? No, what did he do? He came out of the tomb. Remember, he went right to the one who betrayed him. He says, Peter, do you love me? Well, I'm fond of you, Lord. Now, do you love me, Peter? Then go feed my sheep. What did he do to Thomas? Oh, you doubted me? You doubted me? Do you know who I am? I'm the Son of God. What did he do? Remember he came to Thomas? He says, Thomas, come here, man. You want to touch my hands? Look, I'm not arguing against discernment. I'm just saying, look, you're going to get hurt, but I just think I don't want to get old and bitter. I don't want to get old and angry. You know what? I may give money to that person, and they may misuse it. That's between them and God. That ain't between them and me. Because God told me to help that person. Oh, you ain't getting in my wallet. So you don't give anybody anything because one person used your money improperly. Aren't you glad God didn't stop giving you coin because you don't use the money right? Aren't you glad God's not like, I'll tell you what, I gave Mark some money and he didn't do very good with it. I'm going to let him kind of beg for the rest of his life. Let's just assume that we all that we're all each other's friends, and when we find out we have an enemy in our midst, we deal with that enemy, but we keep loving each other. It's a better way to live, isn't it? I think so. Because I just think that the side effects of just always assuming the worst is just... This is why like social media can be so destructive, because you didn't see how somebody said something, and then people jump to massive conclusions. That's why I used to post a lot of stuff, don't post a lot of stuff anymore. Oh, you were talking about me, weren't you? That's why it makes it hard for you to even make eye contact with a lot of you, because it's like when I say something, you're like, you looked right at me. You knew our conversation we had, and you looked right at me. We're always jumping to conclusions. Man, let's let the people of God give each other the benefit of the doubt. Amen? And let's love each other. And then when people hurt us, and they will, let's forgive them. And let's make a new friend. And let's love somebody else. And let's not get old and bitter and angry and resentful. Let's be like Jesus is to us. His mercy is new every morning. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. I know this was a tough sermon because it was a tough sermon for me. Maybe God brought somebody to your mind that you've been holding a grudge against for a long time. And you need to forgive them today. You need to make some new friends. You need to open up your heart again. I want to tell you, if you're here today, the only person that can change your heart is Jesus. And Jesus loves you unconditionally. And you will betray him and you will turn your back on him and he'll never stop loving you. If you've never given your life to Jesus Christ, there's nobody will ever love you like him. So today would be a beautiful day to take that step of faith. If you're here and you have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, but you have hate in your heart towards somebody else, they may not ask for your forgiveness, but would you forgive them right now where you are? If you're tired and lonely, would you make some new friends this week? Would you reach out to somebody to be a friend? Father, I want to thank you for this text. I want to thank you for this story. I needed it. Oftentimes, you know personally, Lord, how lonely I have gotten because I have pushed people away, because I have been hurt by church members in the past. So it makes me push other church members away, and you have shown me over the years I've been a pastor that what a mistake that is. Lord, help me to even love even more than I have now. Give me a greater compassion for the people in my life. Thank you, God, for never stop loving me, even though my relationship with you has been up and down. You've never stopped loving me, and I thank you for that. Help us as we leave, Lord, to be kind people. Help us to be generous people. Help us to be giving people. We love you and thank you for all you've done for us. Help us to show it to others in this world. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you again for listening to our series on 2 Samuel with Pastor Mark Doss. If you have questions about today's message, please contact our church office at info@topekabaptist.org. Give us a call at 785-862-0988 or check us out online at www.topekabaptist.org.